Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Jim Borden. I'm Principal Software Engineer on the Couchbase Lite team, and I'm joined today by Priya Rajakapal, our Director of Product Management, and we're going to be talking to you today about Nickel for Mobile. And I will let Priya go ahead and take it away for the introduction of the actual product side. So, Priya.
Thank you, Jim, for the introduction. At Connect this week, we announced the 3.0 beta release of our Couchbase Lite and Sync Gateway products. The 3.0 is a major groundbreaking release. We are introducing significant platform expansion capabilities on Couchbase Lite, and we are making core architectural enhancements on Sync Gateway in the areas of administration, manageability, and security. In this session, as Jim mentioned, we'll dig a little deeper into one of the key new release defining features on Couchbase Lite, which is namely the nickel string-based query support. For those who are unfamiliar with Couchbase Lite or don't have much experience with Couchbase Lite, I'll begin with a quick primer on Couchbase Lite. Couchbase Lite is a full-featured NoSQL JSON document database for your mobile, desktop, and embedded applications. We announced the beta release of a Kotlin for Android and a Couchbase Lite for C support at Connect this year. We have a dedicated session on how you could build Android applications using Kotlin. And we also have a dedicated session on Couchbase Lite for C, so be sure to check those out. So Couchbase Lite is distributed as a framework and it's linked within your application. So essentially, Couchbase Lite is an embedded database that sits and runs within the context of your application. So from an application perspective, an app really interfaces with this native API layer. So the native API layer exposes the Couchbase Lite functionality in native platform languages, such as C# for Windows or Swift for iOS, Java for Android, Kotlin for Android, and so on. Next, you have a native platform bindings layer, which is the implementation of the native API layer. And that native platform bindings layer interfaces with this Lite core engine. The Lite core engine, think of it as the brain of Couchbase Lite. So it's implemented in C, C++, highly performant, implements the core storage, query, and data sync functionality. And finally, you have the storage engine. So all your JSON documents are binary encoded and stored in a very efficient format. So as I mentioned, from an application perspective, an application interfaces with the native API layer. And this API layer exposes a number of Couchbase Lite functions that includes a database, document CRUD functionality, query, data sync, and we also have a number of observer APIs that allows an application to asynchronously be notified of changes to a document, database, replication status, and so on. In this presentation today, we are going to focus on the query API enhancements. Back in when we announced or launched Couchbase Lite 2.0, we introduced a query builder API. This is a powerful query API with a fluent interface that allows applications to construct queries using SQL semantics, includes indexing, full text search capabilities. Probably one of the key value proposition of this API was the compile time checks that it offered. So if there are issues with your query that can be detected during compile time, so it makes your application very robust. So let's look at a quick example of a query builder API. So this is an example in Android. You select all documents from a given data store. Subject to a conditional expression. You can chain any number of conditional expressions. And then, of course, the result set can be sorted in this particular case by a particular property in ascending order. Here's the equivalent API in Swift. So as you can see, the API is pretty much unified across platforms. And also from the syntax, you can see that it has the SQL semantics, so it makes it very easy for developers with a SQLite background to ramp up on this new API. Now, new in 3.0, we are introducing Nickel string API support. So if you're not familiar with Nickel, it is Couchbase's implementation of SQL for JSON query language specification called SQL++. The Nickel Query API is supported by Couchbase Server. Now let's look at the a Nickel query statement that is the equivalent of the Query Builder API that we just discussed in the previous slide. So here's the equivalent Nickel statement. You do a select star from underscore. Here underscore refers to the database against which the query is applied. You can of course explicitly give a name over here and say select star from database name, say foobar, but in that case you have to make sure that that name matches the name of the database against which the query is applied. Then of course you have the where clause, which is where you can chain any number of logical expressions for filtering the data set. Then you can do aggregation or sorting and so on. Running then you apply the query against the database using the string that you just constructed. So pretty straightforward. So as you can just, when you compare the two APIs, you can see that the Nickel syntax is much more concise compared to the Query Builder syntax. Now, creating indexes on Couchbase Lite for regular queries is optional. So, which means, you can do queries, you can run queries against Couchbase Lite. You don't have to explicitly create indexes, but of course, in most production applications, you'll have at least one or more indexes because that vastly improves performance. So once again, with the Nickel query, you can create an index. You have two choices. You can continue to use the existing index builder API, where you create a value index. You provide it with a list of properties against which the index is created. Then you create the index on the database, provide it with the value index, and give it a name. Pretty straightforward. New in 3.0, we have an index configuration API, wherein you define a index configuration. So in this particular case, it's a value index configuration because we are talking about value indexes. You provide it with the list of properties against which on which the index is created. And then you can create an index using that configuration and give it a name. Now, Couchbase Lite supports full text search. Now, full text search, so you can, of course, search for text using regular pattern matching or regex expressions, but full text search enables natural language querying. So you can get functionality like stemming, relevance-based ranking, locale-based natural language querying, and so on. Unlike regular queries, when we talk about full text search queries, creating an index, you have to create a full text search index. Once again, you have two options on which by which that index can be created. You can use the existing Query Builder API, or you can use the new index configuration API that we just introduced in the previous slide. So this is how you create an index. First create, in this particular case, it's a full text index configuration object, provided with a Nickel expression, the list of the property or properties on which you want the index, full text search index to be created. You have two optional parameters. You can specify if accents have to be ignored or not, and you can also provide the language identifier. This is how you create an index, very similar to the value index. Create a full text index using the configuration that you just specified and give it a name. So how do you use this full text search index within your full text search query? Here is a Nickel statement. Once again, select star from underscore. We just discussed what that syntax means. Full text search is enabled through the match function. And to the match function, you provide the index, the full text search index that we just created, and you provide the keyword on which you want to do the full text search. Of course, you can, in this particular example, we are also ordering the results set by relevance. And of course, running or creating a full text search query is similar to the way you would create a query, a regular query. In terms of results set processing, there isn't anything that's Nickel query specific, but I wanted to use this opportunity to call out some API enhancements that we have introduced in 3.0. Now, when you executed a query in 2.x, you got a result set back. You would typically iterate over the results result set, and every element in that result set you would map it to a dictionary or map it to a dictionary object. Now in 3.0, we have a new to JSON transformer. So essentially, once again, you execute the query, you get the result set, and every item in that result set, you can transform that to a JSON string, which makes it very easy to encode into a JSON object. Once again, with a nickel query, you can continue to use the existing way of processing the result set and use the dictionary object, dictionary transformer, but to.json is a convenience API that we've introduced in 3.0. As in the case of Query Builder interface, we support parameterized queries. Now, how the parameters are specified and associated with a query is the same as is the case with the Query Builder API. The difference really is in the way the parameters are specified within the query. So if you look at the highlighted text over there, or in this example, in the query string example, you see that we use the $prefixed placeholders for specifying named parameters. Now that you've seen a few examples of the Nickel API, let's look at why did we create a new syntax? Why did we add a new way of querying, right? I mean, we certainly have Query Builder. It's great, got a lot of advantages. So why did we introduce a new way of querying? Now, if you recall at the beginning of this presentation, I mentioned that Nickel is the query language on Couchbase Server. So what this effectively means is that you can reuse your queries across Couchbase Lite and Server. Now, I want to point out that there are certain differences between the implementation of Nickel on a Couchbase Lite and on Server, but for most part, they are the same. So you can reuse the queries that were created on Server on Couchbase Lite and vice versa. I'm going to gloss over this particular one because we are going to talk more about this particular benefit in the next couple of slides. So let's hold off on that particular advantage, which is all about native API bridging, the advantages when it comes to building native API bridging plugins. So jumping ahead, we have C platform support. As I mentioned, we introduced C API support with Couchbase Lite 3.0. A string-based query API is really the only viable option when it comes to C API. Now, one of the design principles of Couchbase Lite is that we try to have feature parity to the extent possible across all the platforms. So as we look to introduce the query Nickel-based query API on Couchbase Lite for C, it just made sense to introduce that on all the platforms as well. And in addition to the fact that you get feature parity, we also have these other advantages that I just mentioned. So let's dig a little deeper into the second advantage that's listed over here. This is all about the convenience around building cross-platform plugins. Now, in order to use Couchbase Lite iOS on Android native libraries within your cross-platform or hybrid applications like your Ionic or React Native apps, you typically have to build bridging plugins that bridge from the native world to the JavaScript world. So essentially what these bridging plugins do is export the native APIs so they can be consumed by these JavaScript applications. Now, when it comes to mapping the native APIs that are exposed by Couchbase Lite into the JavaScript world, probably the most complex aspect of that bridging is bridging the Query Builder API. So the new string-based API makes it very convenient to bridge between the native layer and the JavaScript world. So let's look at it with an example. So as you can see, when you look at the Query Builder API to the left, we can see that it's pretty tedious to map the Query Builder API in a generic fashion to the JavaScript world. So the typical pattern that's adopted by applications today is to develop purpose-built query APIs. Now, immediately you can see the problem with this, right? It just means that every time your query changes or your app evolves, so you need new querying capabilities, your plugin needs to change. Your plugin also not going to be general purpose. It cannot be used across applications because it's very purpose built for an application. Now, in contrast, when you look at the example to the right, you can see that with a new Nickel query API, you have just a single API that you need to bridge. This can be done in a general purpose way. So which means your plugin is generic, can be used across application. It doesn't have to change as your app evolves and includes additional querying functionality. A quick note for our existing users who are on Couchbase Lite 2.x. This is not a breaking change. It's an additive feature, which means that you can continue to use your applications with existing Query Builder API, and they will coexist with the new APIs that you construct using the Nickel syntax. You don't have to recreate the indexes. See, if you've got indexes that are created using the existing index builder syntax, you can continue to use that in the context of the Nickel APIs. And a quick point to note is that the Query Builder API is a first-class citizen on Couchbase Lite. It continues to be supported. It's got its own benefits. What we are providing is an alternative way and for the benefits that it provides. Now, with that overview and context, over to Jim for a quick demo.
Okay, thank you, Priya, for that introduction. And some of you out there might be thinking, oh, yeah, that sounds really nice, but what exactly does it mean for me? And I'm here to try to answer that question for some of you, because if you're like me, you kind of want to see what this thing does in action. And I've prepared 2 demos today to sort of touch on some of the points that were made in the first part of this presentation. And the first one is the first of the 3 sort of points about the string-based Nickel API, which is that you can continue to use your server queries on mobile directly, just basically copy and paste a lot of them. Not all of them, as mentioned. It's a subset of the server Nickel API, but a whole bunch of them, especially this less complicated ones. Let's see. The CB Lite tool is over here in our GitHub repo in Couchbase Labs, Couchbase Mobile Tools. At the top level, you'll see there's a bunch of other stuff in here, but CB Lite has a link here, and this is telling you all about what this tool does. If you used SQLite before, it's sort of like the SQLite 3 command line tool. We can sort of draw comparisons here because SQLite itself is a library that gets embedded into an application. And the SQLite 3 command line tool is a command line tool which exercises that library. Similarly, this is a tool which exercises the Litecore library and lets you run various ad hoc things on a given database. So in this tab, I actually have an instance of Couchbase Server 7.0 running, and I've imported one of the sample buckets, which is travel sample. Inside, there is actually several pieces of information, several sort of realms of information. It's basically information that you would use to plan a trip. Like you need the landmarks, hotels, airports, airlines, and routes, all the information about basically how you travel. You get rid of this thing here. And I've prepared several queries to demonstrate between the two. But first, over here, I'm going to show CB Lite. I have the travel sample app here as a Couchbase Lite database on my hard disk. And I've just opened it just like this. And you can see like I can just start running queries like this. And as mentioned before, the underbar means this database. But since this is named travel sample, I can also type in travel sample if I want to. Or underbar. Either one gives you the same result. The first thing I'd like to do is this query, and I'll explain what this query is actually doing once I paste it in here. So I'm looking for the equipment and the airline ID from the travel sample bucket here on this side. I want everything that starts in SFO and ends in SEA. These are two airport codes. And I'm gonna just sort them by the airline ID. And so I'll execute that. And you can see here, I've got these airline IDs and this equipment. This is codes for airplanes. This is an Embraer. This is a Boeing 737-400, regular 737. This one has a whole bunch of stuff, Airbus, Boeing, and some 75s as well. Very nice. But let's see. Airline ID, airline bar 2009. That's not the greatest identifier. I can't look on a map and see, well, what's this airline? Where do I find airline bar 2009? Well, let's see what kind of document I have here. This is a root document. I don't think it will have the airline name in it. No, it doesn't, unfortunately. Oh dear, whatever to do. Well, before we get to that, let me just take a moment here to copy and paste this over to the CB Lite command line. And by default, the CB Lite command line tool is going to try to tabulate your results for you to make them a little bit more like pretty in the command line. So in order to show you actual JSON, I'm going to give it the raw flag. And then you can see, looks like I've got all the same. I've got all the same results here and here. So E75, 734, E75, 374, airline 2009, airline 2009. Very good. But I want the airline name. So what exactly is it that this airline ID is giving me? So the ID of a different type of document. So if I paste this in, this is getting the name from the document whose ID is airline 2009. Delta Airlines. Okay, very good. So, but this is not a root document, as you'll notice. This is an airline document. Let's jump back over to here. Okay, everything's still the same. Very good. But I want this information and I want the previous information and I want them at the same time. So this is the function of a join. Now, some of you, including me, will get scared when you hear the word join. And it's something that, well, I guess you either know it or you don't know it. It's one of those things that you come across if you work in this kind of stuff a lot, or you just don't come across it at all. But at a high basic level, what it does is it takes sort of two different pieces of information and presents them into the same result, which is exactly what we want to do here. So I won't go into too much detail about it because that would probably end up taking up the whole session, but select from travel sample root, then I'm going to join. And the way that I want to join this is like before. I want to get the document whose ID is the source airport key on this document. And so once I do all this, I'm just going to put it line by line so it's easier to see. Once I've done this, I have a much better sort of layout here. I have the equipment here and the name of the airline, American Airlines. Select raw. There we go. You can see I get the same information. 737 American Airlines, E75 734 Delta Airlines, E75 734 Delta Airlines. Very nice. So in this way, you can see that even something more complex along the lines of this, which uses a join and a where and order by, you figure it out once and you can use it on both sides. Now, that's not to say that everything is 100% the same, unfortunately. There are a few smaller differences, such as, for example, here. If I want to get all of the addresses of all the hotel documents in the bucket, I would use a query like this. Some of them don't have an address somehow. I don't know how you would find them, but they're null addresses. So the nulls will come in here. But if I were to go over here and do the same query, I would get actual information. Well, the difference here being that when you order by in server and when you order by in mobile, the nulls will sort at the beginning in server and at the end. And I don't know why I keep getting this, because I forget spaces, that's why. And they will sort at the end in Couchbase Lite. So that's just something to be aware of. And if you want to get around this and get the same results, you can add an is not null constraint. So as you can see, copying and pasting these queries, even a complex one like this between server and mobile, will continue to work. And that's good, because it means that you can figure out stuff like this once and then sort of copy and paste it over. But unfortunately, that's not to say that it's 100% the same, because there are a few differences that will affect certain cases. Like, for example, this one. I have a query here that says, I want to select all the addresses from the hotel documents in this database and just give me the first 10. And here's the address is null. So, well, I don't really know how you're going to find this hotel if the address is null. But aside from that, let's go and do the same query over here. You will see that I actually get information here. And the difference here is that nulls in Couchbase Lite will sort to the end of the results, and nulls in server will sort at the beginning. That is just one thing to be aware of. So let's go back for a minute and see if we can work around this. So I want to type hotel, and I want to just get rid of the nulls because, you know, they're probably not important anyway. So I'll just select where the address is not null, and this might look familiar. It's the same as before, the same as the results from up here. But let us type in where type is hotel and address is not null. You'll see the results are the same now that we've added the is not null constraint. And that is the end of the first demo. The thing being shown here is that you can use these queries between server and mobile just as is. It's really just a convenient way to do things. I have prepared a second, and let me remember how to use PowerPoint here. Demo 2, converting existing query builder queries to Nickel. This is probably going to affect pretty much everyone who's used Couchbase Lite in version 2 if they would like to convert query builder queries to Nickel, which I'm guessing quite a few of them will, because it's nice. So we have an app that we wrote, simple demo app. It's called the user profile app, and it's using query builder statements to query data. And so what I'm going to do is convert these to Nickel strings and observe the effects of that. So in case you're curious, this Couchbase Labs user profile dash Couchbase dash mobile dash Xamarin, yes, kind of a long name, but there you go. User profile Couchbase mobile Xamarin. And in particular, I'm working on the query branch. And here it is, and you might notice right in front of you, I've already paused right here on where the query actually is. So what is this query? Let me run this application, because sometimes while recording, it takes a moment to run. So we're looking for all the results of a document where the name, which I'm going to provide in a text box, is like, which means that this is a wildcard and this is a wildcard. So basically, this name appearing anywhere in the string, lowercase, is like this. So it will appear anywhere in the string. So if you search for university, you'll probably get almost every single result, because university is probably in every university name. And similarly with country, we're searching for the lowercase of country against percent lowercase country %. So anything with that country in it. So here's the app. We're not interested too much in the login screen right now. This is the screen that I want to show, and you'll notice name and country. So that corresponds with the two inputs that I had shown previously. So if I search for Tokyo University, I'll get all of this Tokyo University because Tokyo University is inside every one of these. If it were the Tokyo University, that would also show up because it can be in the middle as well. Now let's say I want to search for Tokyo University in the United States. Oops, sorry. There's no Tokyo University in the United States. You have to try again in a different country. Let's try Japan because that's where Tokyo is. So there we go. That shows up all nicely. And I'm going to upgrade this in 2 steps. First, I'm going to comment out all of this query builder stuff. And then I am going to uncomment all this query stuff below it. So you might be familiar with this by now. Select star from underbar. And we're just converting all of what we did up here into a nickel string, where lower name should be like %name. And if we provided a country, we tack on this on the end, and lower country like country. So I'm going to hot reload these changes because Visual Studio 2019 is cool. And I'm going to do this again, but I'm not going to get any results because I forgot to do the second part, which is accounting for this underbar. When you do the query builder queries and you give it a data source like here, the key that your data is going to be on in the result is the name of this database. But here we just pass underbar. So what to do? Well, the database name is universities, but I've passed underbar. So instead of universities, I'm going to get the dictionary of underbar. That is how we get the results. And there we go. We have the results again. And just to show, the second part is still functioning as we would expect. So here's some resources that I've mentioned before. Some of them I've mentioned before. Some of them are something I've not mentioned before, but various Couchbase Lite reference, documentation, the CB Lite tool, which I'd mentioned, the demo app, which I'd mentioned, and the download page. And so I hope that you enjoyed today's presentation about Nickel. Again, my name was Jim Borden, and we had Priya Rajakopal with us today. And you can find us on the web at these locations down at the bottom left of the slide. And so I hope you enjoyed today's session about Nickel. Again, my name is Jim Borden. I'm on the engineering team for Couchbase Lite, and I was joined by Priya Rajakopal. And thank you for attending today's session.